Welcome, everybody, to this historical event, the first ever A Good Story podcast. Well, the first one in this dimension, anyways. Maybe in other dimensions, this has already happened, but in this dimension, it is the first. Here on A Good Story podcast, we take historical subjects and have the type of discussions you might expect to have drunkenly with your friends in a bar, or with your amateur historian uncle at Thanksgiving. You know, those conversations we all love about real history, quote unquote, as they tell you how the Templars settled the Americas long before the natives did. But I digress. Today we're going to be talking about three legendary warriors. A Finnish soldier who hated communism so much he joined the SS just to fight the Soviets. A sniper who you really didn't want to meet in the snow. And a Viking warrior who met a very, very unfortunate end. Especially if you're a man. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and listen to me, Jared, and Joe talk about three legendary warriors.
First, okay, so my story is about a soldier named Simo Haya. I believe that's how you say his name. If I pronounce it incorrectly, which I know I did, my bad, I fucked it up. I tried to research it before and remember it, but he's Finnish. He is known. he is.
Finns.
What do I have against the Finns?
Yeah.
They're not Swedes like me, so fuck
Wow.
them. I don't know.
You are a racist.
Yeah. You are. God damn it. All right, let's start this over. Hold on. Here we go. Let's talk
Shaved
shit
head,
after.
Bender, you're losing already.
After the fucking thing, then we'll talk shit. Let me not introduce my guy first. All right, here we go. So my guy is Simo Haya, better known by his nickname, the White Death.
Keep going.
Well, I've heard this story, I'll drink.
Damn. All right, let's start again. I don't know how to do this. Okay, you'll see when it gets to your turn. Okay.
I'll tell you a story.
Maybe you won't.
But
All right. Oh, that's actually not a bad idea. Okay, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you. All right, so let me tell you a story about Simo Haya. He was a soldier in the Finnish army during the Winter War with the Soviet Unions and the Finns, and he was really impressive. He was considered the greatest sniper in all of, known history. He has over 500 confirmed kills, and they believe with the sniper alone, and at least 300 more probably they believe with some machine gun. So basically the background of him was he was a country boy. He loved to hunt. He was a great marksman, and he would win all these tournaments. He had trophies everywhere, and he gets called up for the war with the Soviets who invaded during World War II. They thought they could take advantage of the chaos to overtake Finland. Problem was, Stalin he purged all the military leaders who he thought could overthrow him. So the Red Army was very disorganized, and they didn't even have camouflage in the snow. So obviously in the Soviet Russia and Finland, it's very cold, very snowy. And what made the White Death very special was the reason I really love his story is that he wasn't just a great sniper. Yes, he had a lot of talent, but he also did very ingenious stuff to prevent himself from getting caught or killed, although he was injured later. The first thing he did, so he used to eat snow and keep snow in his mouth, so his breath would not give away his position. He would usually go up against other snipers in the Soviet army, and obviously if they're looking for you, they will look for any sort of disturbance or any movement or whatnot. So this made him very unique because not many people did this. This technique he made of patting down the snow in front of his muzzle, so when he shot his sniper rifle, the snow would not puff up, because that obviously would give away his position too. Some other things he did was he would put snow on the end of the barrel of the gun, because it would get hot, obviously, and he didn't want the steam, much like his breath, to give away his position. And that's just incredible to me that he would think of these little things that kept him alive. So more than just the kills, he was also a genius at surviving. So I'll talk about a little bit about how good he was as a sniper. He had over 25 kills in one day. And this was during the Winter War, as it's named. So there's very little sunlight in Finland at that time. So you only have a couple hours of sunlight. So he got all those kills in a couple hours. They never knew where he was. They couldn't find him. The Soviets were so afraid of him, they would just send out droves of snipers to go try to find him, and he would kill most of them. And they just got sick of him at one point, and they basically carpet bombed him, not with airplanes, but with artillery. They would just say, we think he's over there on that mountain or hill, and they would just shoot all their artillery at that location to hopefully kill him. And none of that worked. He survived everything. The only thing that happened was a week before the war ended, he actually did get shot with an explosive bullet in his jaw. And his story is incredible because they thought he was dead. They actually grabbed his body, dumped it like in a pile of bodies with everybody else. And some other soldier was sent to go look for him by a commander, say, oh, what happened to him? So they found his body and still thought he was dead. But then they saw his legs start to twitch. And so they said, oh, he's alive. Hey, he's alive. So they took him, treated him. His whole jaw, left jaw, I believe his left jaw, was missing. And he lost a couple teeth. And he was very deformed. I think he ended up having 26 surgeries. And this guy, in just one war, in one season, has the most confirmed kills of any sniper in history. He's considered by many American snipers to be the greatest sniper in world history and sort of an inspiration. And he was just a normal country guy. He was trained, and he had been in the military years before the war happened, but he wasn't anything you would think, like he didn't go to sniper school or anything. He wasn't anything special, but he was so talented. And the thing that really separated him was he loved using an iron scope. He didn't use the scope. Sorry, Jared. Help me out here.
He uses iron sights, not a scope, and I actually
Yes.
have more to interject. The rifle he uses is a Mosin Nagant. It's one of the most widely produced rifles to ever exist, and the reason that Finland had a bunch of them is because he used to be part of Russia before the Red Revolution, the old Bolshevik things, which is I guess another part we can get into history. But the reason they had a bunch of them is because of that. They're from only part of Russia, and so that was what they were issued pretty much standard in the army. Is this bolt action clunky rifle. Today you get one for about $100, super cheap, standard, easy to use. Iron sights at the time were standard. Yes, they had telescopic sights as like scopes, but they were far less common, more for sniper designated rifles. Finland didn't field a bunch of them. It is thought that he did use that, not only because you wouldn't get a glare from the scope being reflected, but also because it's just simple what he was used to. He said country bumpkin used rifle in competition. In competition, you would have just used a standard rifle. You wouldn't. The whole optic thing wasn't a huge craze back then. They were very unreliable as far as accuracy goes, just for the simple fact that they could be bumped, jostled. They weren't very stable like they are today. Even like they weren't even waterproof for most of them back then, which is a huge problem. So that was part of it. Another giant part of it was just the fact that it's more standard ammunition. I could go on. This is one of my favorite stories, just simply because, yes, he had a lot of confirmed kills. Yes, he killed a lot of Russians. The Russians were poorly trained, poorly equipped. They were still wearing brown uniforms in the winter. They didn't have winter clothing. Like they were wearing literally brown. The tanks were green, like just rolling through Finland where everything's white. So they stuck out like a sore thumb, just dropping people left and right.
Yes, the old Russian strategy. Eventually, enough men will kill it.
Well, the kill bots have a set kill counter, so I just sit wave upon wave of my own men until they've maxed it out.
Yeah, it's crazy how they would just throw people at him. And I also, it's so interesting. He didn't lay down. He wouldn't lay down.
Hide in trees sometimes.
but he'd also just sit. He'd sit on like one knee because he said, that's what I'm used to. And it's so interesting that they not just with snipers, but in any military tactics or whatnot or strategy, they teach you a very strict way of how to do things, right? This is how you do it: A, B, C, D, and E. But a guy who's just like a country kid, it just goes, no, I like to shoot this way, therefore it feels natural to me. And then he just got away with it and was very successful. Obviously, he had all white on, as Jared said, that the Russians weren't camouflaged, but the Finns sure were.
Oh, yes, they were.
The crazy part is he helped. It was him, and I believe it was 30 other. I think it was like 40 people, 40 Finns. They were up against about 4,000 Soviet troops, and they beat them. And it was mainly because of poor strategy, poor uniforms, all that stuff. But it's still impressive to see this tiny little band of people, this tiny little guerrilla force just take on 4,000 troops and beat them. And he was so prolific that the Russians gave him one of the coolest nicknames ever, the White Death. I mean, when your enemies are giving you cool nicknames, that's when you're like, oh, okay, like, that's awesome. Or they're just trying to bombard you with artillery just to kill one man, and they can't do it. That's really cool. So, that's sort of the end of my story. But, what do you guys think?
I'll say it's pure, like, demoralizing having one guy kill that many troops and have every single soldier when they walk out think, that's going to come from some unknown direction. It's not someone who I can see shooting at me. It's going to be just silent, then I'm dead. I guess it's super demoralizing. Yeah. Plus, like, you were saying earlier about, like, the overwhelming odds in the battles they fought. Like, that happened so commonly during the Winter War. Like, that's why the war is so famous. The Finns were famous for not having, like, a lot of, like, mobile, like, infantry. They didn't have any tanks. They used tank mines to stop them. They used small forces to, like, small, like, groups to just stop these giant tanks by planting enough mines and shit.
Hey, are you talking shit about the Finns? They had skis, Jared. Come on. And the military with skis is top notch.
The Finns lost 26,000 during this war. The Russians lost 166,000. That tells you, the Finns still lost it. They still surrendered 10% of their land.
That's light for Russians in casualties. That's
not that bad. I was gonna say,
they came out all right.
I was like, I don't care.
And for 10% of Finland?
In World War II, they lost the most people by a lot.
Wasn't it like 24 million or something?
Yeah, but they also killed the most Germans.
They did.
You keep throwing men.
Oh, that's another thing I was going to mention. The Eastern Front. The reason that he got hit by an exploding round. They weren't following the Geneva Convention. That was illegal to use that against troops back then. Yeah, they were used widely on the Eastern Front, but not in Europe because they were afraid the Americans and the British would use them. But the Russians and the Germans on the Eastern Front both use exploding ammunition.
It's kind of like nuclear weapons in a way, sort of like, well, we'll use it as long as nobody else is willing to use it. So obviously against Finland, they're not going to probably have exploding bullets. So the Soviets are like, well, we're kind of losing here, or we're not doing too well. We'll take any advantage we can get. And then, on the Western Front, it's like, okay, well, we don't want to bring America and Britain into it. It's sort of like any other weapon that's used. Like, it's very human of people to do. Like, I'll use this until somebody else is willing to use it. Then I'm like, oh, wait,
no.
Let's not all use it now. Let's calm down here, everybody.
You can hurt me too. That's not part of the deal, Bender.
That's no.
Crazy about nuclear weapons. When they made the first nuclear bomb, the leading scientists were like, this could just ignite the atmosphere. I don't know what's going to happen. And they still did it.
The funny thing was, like, they had two bombs to drop. They only had two. Little Boy and big. They said that drop Little Boy, and the other bomb they never tested. But they were so sure that it would work, they just dropped it. Like, oh, we're 100% on this one. Just
it's fine. Yeah. So, like I said, like, he's really, as soon as we said we're gonna each have a story about a soldier. I thought about Lawrence of Arabia first, but then I was like, I'd have to touch up on him a lot more. But this guy's always just really impressed me for. Basically, honestly, he's pretty much just a normal guy because he wasn't in the military when the war happened and getting called up, and to be so prolific, and then for him he was so humble. He's just like, He never talked about it. He never bragged about it. He was just like, yeah, I just did my job for Finland. And they're like, do you regret it? He's like, well, those are my sins or whatever. But if we didn't fight, then there would be no Finland. So somebody has to do it, which is that's not a mentality a lot of people have today, I guess, would be, I don't want to kill someone, which, is obviously horrific. And he killed he probably killed over 800 people by himself. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, no one's going to ever touch that record just because of the nature of warfare now. Like, it's an untouchable record. Probably the best sniper to ever live in the United States was Carlos Hathcock. Like, he's a very famous U.S. sniper, but his kill count never came close just because of the nature of warfare. He's fighting in Vietnam, where it's like you're not going to have a brown uniformed soldier on a white background walk around.
They also made it easy for him, so it's like...
Oh, that's a good question. Do you think he was just? Do you think he was actually? I mean, obviously he was a good sniper. We can't say like, okay, he was a shit sniper. But do you think he made it? They made it easy. Like he's a beneficiary of them making it easy for him.
Oh yes, but it's like
the Russians were definitely disorganized. Yes, but no, he's still pretty good.
Yeah, he's still unique. He's still a unique soldier that comes around like once every so many years. Like this, like stories like this, just like there's a reason people still remember and still talk about it. How crazy it is. Even if the Russians had winter gear, maybe his kill count wouldn't have been as high, but I mean, you can't say that he would have still just destroyed like the same way. Like, yes, it may have been hard for him to see with an iron sight at that distance, like an actual soldier, but still, I think it'd still be very famous.
Yeah, I agree.
We're also just normal people too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, that's just how warfare was back then too. They were just your guy like you have to go fight because we don't have enough people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear some skis and have at it. Oh, there was a fun story that I did want to bring up that I actually didn't see any videos touch on this, I don't think. There was one time him and some other soldiers captured a Soviet, and he thought they were going to kill him, obviously, so because they blindfolded him. And like, oh, I'm going to die. And what they did was they spun him around and made him dizzy so he couldn't tell his sense of direction. And then they brought him to an encampment, and they just partied with him. And then they sent him back and are like, all right, you got to go back, man. And he's like, I don't want to go back. And then he
he doesn't want to go back. He's a Russian peasant. He's like, I'm not here. Take me with you. Let me live in Finland.
Dude, do you imagine him probably just pissing himself, just blindfold on, just going like, I'm gonna die. Fuck, I didn't want to go in this war. Fuck Stalin. And then all of a sudden they make you dizzy. You're like, oh God, what are they doing? Why are they're gonna torture me? And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, let's have a good time. And you're like, what? It's like the greatest, like, goes from like the worst feeling to like the greatest feeling ever. I'm sure that guy never had a high like that ever again. He literally believed he was gonna die, and then he partied, and then they're like, all right, go back to the Soviet side. And he's like, I don't wanna.
Maybe he spent his whole life chasing that high. Maybe he like became an adrenaline junkie for extreme sports. You don't know better.
He probably just got sent off to Germany and died. Probably.
Well, they probably thought he was a traitor, so it's probably some gulag. But yeah.
Yeah, probably. He probably didn't have a great. I mean, it was Soviet Stalin era Russia, so I mean, most people didn't.
A gulag for you.
Yeah. Nobody had good lives back then. If you did well, Stalin got jealous and just killed you. So it was like, what should I do? Should I not do well when I fight?
Shoot for the lower middle. The lower middle.
Yeah, that's basically it. Like, just say, okay, I did enough to survive, but I don't want to be famous. Like, because if I am, Stalin gets jealous and will kill me. So I guess I'll just dip out.
Don't be too good looking. Don't act too smart. Like, nope.
Yep. The nail that sticks out gets hammered. So fuck that. Yeah. That's
motto.
Much like Icarus, you flew too close to the sunbender.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's basically my story. That's the entire thing I have. I just love that story. It shows like he has a compassionate side too, which is I don't know, those guys, like, they had to separate that because you have to kill so many people, but then also he had this side of going, okay, let's spare this guy. So which could have been really bad. I mean, I know they spun him around and they blindfolded him so he wouldn't know where their camp was, but that's still a risky move, right? Letting a opposing soldier go. If his commander finds him and says like, okay, we're gonna kill you. Yeah, we're gonna kill you if you don't like tell us. If you don't figure out where their encampment was, your life depends on it. And the guy is going to be like, okay, well, I have to now
There's a mountain
try my
here.
best.
Anyway,
Are you going to go, sir?
So are we recording?
I guess so. We are recording, but
Okay.
well, let me tell you a story about a man born in Finland in 1919 who also fought in the Winter War.
Wait, are you serious right now?
That be the same guy?
No, this one's name is Lauri Torni.
Torni.
His last name is Torni. Later,
What
Thorn.
are the odds we picked the same war? That
Well,
is
To be fair,
crazy.
this guy fought in like 4 wars.
okay. Fair enough.
To be fair. Born in Finland, joined the reserve kind of army as, Bolsheviks. Their revolution wasn't too long ago. Finland hadn't been around that long. And so I guess they were kind of seeing the writing on the wall when Stalin's like, it's a pretty nice land. Kind of want that back. Thus, the Winter War, like we previously discussed. And I won't have to go into any details, I guess, since we already covered a lot of it. But anyway, what happened was this soldier, he was initially part of since he was part of the reserves, he was just part of the logistics train, kind of helping out with food rations and stuff, until one night he snuck out of camp, snuck into the Soviet camp, captured a sergeant, and brought him back.
Wow.
Yeah. So he did that, and the guys were like, I think I see some potentials. They promoted him on the spot, put him in charge of a small force, and he eventually became part of this force that would stop Soviet tanks. Their whole goal was to on skis, ski with a bunch of anti-tank mines, plant the anti-tank mines, and stop Soviet tanks. And that's not the craziest part. The craziest part is they were wildly successful at it. Wildly successful at it. And so that went on for a while.
Only the Finns.
Oh yeah, only the Finns.
Fight tanks.
But this helped him create a great hatred for the Soviets, especially since Finland technically lost the war and ceded 10% of the land. And part of that 10% they ceded back, or essentially gave up back to Russia, was part of his hometown too. So he's like, fuck the Soviets. Fuck them. So after the Winter War, he was still kind of salty, fuck this. Wanted to hurt the Soviets any way he could. So he's like, no, Germany doesn't really like Soviets. So I'm going to go fight for the German army. So he joined the Germans, became part of the Waffen SS. They trained him.
Okay, now I know who you're talking about. As soon as you said the Nazis, I was like, oh, I know this guy. Okay.
Yep. So trained under the Nazis, and then so the Finns, as a nation, were kind of we kind of like that land back. Winter War just happened. We didn't really lose it. We just couldn't really beat the Soviets by ourselves. So this guy named Adolf Hitler, I don't like all he's got to say, but damn, do we like his hatred for the Soviets.
We like that book he wrote. Got to get rid of the Soviets and populate it with Germans.
Yeah. So anyway, skip forward to Operation Barbarossa, where he plays a very instrumental role in taking part of Finland back. He took back essentially took back his home. That was his hometown was in the part that went to Russia. So fought. Obviously, they took back that part of Russia until later in the war. Things weren't going so great for the Nazis, and Finland kind of saw the writing on the wall. It was like, well, we don't want to get caught with our pants down, so we might as well negotiate with the Kremlin. And pretty much what happened was Finland was like, hey, we'll give you that 10% of your land back. And Russia's like, yes, but we also want reparations for the war. So Finland got screwed pretty hard. It was in well, we'll give you that and a crap ton of money. It was tens of billions of dollars in today's money. It was for a small nation like that too. It was a lot of money. And so he's like, well, I can't fight for my Finns anymore again. And so I'm going to go and fight the Nazis. And that's what he did. He snuck into Germany, trained with the SS again, but this time they taught him commando training. They taught him sabotage, explosives, all that kind of stuff. But things weren't going too hard for Germany, obviously. The Finns made a cut a deal with Russia. So what happened from there is okay, well, we know you're not really German, but we're going to go ahead and make you a captain, and we're going to send you to the front lines real quick. So that's what happened. they drafted him in the German military, and he fought for Germany until he saw the writing on the wall and was like, well, I get captured by the Soviets who fucking hate me. They literally put like a 3 million mark bounty on his head. He's like, yeah, I could get captured by them and they'll torture the shit out of me. Or I could sneak through many lines and get captured by the British who don't know who the fuck I am. That's what he did. He said,
Smart.
and gave himself to the British who didn't know who he was. And so they sent him to a POW camp and somewhere in Germany. And then he was there for a while. And then they're like, well, due to some sort of agreement, we still don't know who you are, but we're going to send you back to Russia. And he's like, fuck that. So they send him on the train to send him to Russia. And he just like hops off the train. Like he escapes from the train, kind of like bounces around for a bit through Europe, makes his way back to Finland to his parents' land and just lives there. Like doesn't use an alias or anything. Like just straight up just uses his name. Lives with his family. And this is for like a while. This is for like, I think like close to a year. Just working odd jobs in a factory until one of the other factory workers like, I know exactly who the fuck you are. So they routed him out to the Soviets, who they didn't rule Finland at the time, but they installed enough like Finnish like Finnish officials for like they're gonna like really punish him. So they essentially said like, well, for betraying Finland and committing war crimes, like by like they called it treason. Like they said, hey, for committing treason, now you're gonna be in jail in Finland for 6 years. And he's like, well, I've kind of just been like trained by the SS to like evade capture, that kind of stuff. So he escaped. Like he just flat out escaped prison. But then what they did is they started spreading the rumor that he was a thief, like a common thief. And he's like, well, I'm not going to let them do that. So he turned himself in. And then when Finland like stopped being ruled by like Russia, essentially, like by a puppet regime, the president of Finland pardoned him actually. So he ended up serving like I think like a few years. And after that, he's like, well, I kind of don't want to be in Finland anymore. I can kind of see how things are going. They might send me to jail again. So he flees to Sweden and becomes a lumberjack. In Sweden, as a lumberjack, he meets this girl. He's like, he's going to marry, but he wants to like have her go. Sends her to go get a bunch of his shit back in Finland, like some papers and stuff, so he can actually flee to South America. He's like, Sweden isn't looking too hot too. The whole Cold War thing is kind of heating up. I don't want to be part of this. Like, I don't want to be like in like this nation. So eventually he gets his papers in. He's like, well, crap. The girl I'm going to marry isn't back with my papers and stuff from Finland, but I just got the opportunity to flee to Venezuela. So he flees to Venezuela, where he's got other Finnish contacts, other Finnish officers who served as SS officers, welcome with open arms. Like, hey, we know you. Yeah. He lives in Venezuela for a while. Then he joins some sort of shipping company, hops aboard a ship, and he's sailing on this ship. And he's like kind of close to the United States. Like, this isn't bad. So since he's obviously not a U.S. citizen, doesn't have papers to like to get off the ship, while they're in the harbor, he jumps out and swims to shore. Now, one of my sources said Alabama, the other one said Louisiana. So I'm going to say somewhere in the South. Flees up to Brooklyn, New York. It makes it up there somehow. I don't know. And
it's just up there.
Yeah, just up there. Working odd jobs where eventually he gets a knock on the door from the FBI, which, I mean, kind of in the FBI's purview to say, hey, not only are you here illegally, you kind of fought for the Nazis in World War II. We kind of got some words some words for you. So, long story short, he knows a guy who knows Bill Donovan. If you know who Bill Donovan is, he's essentially the guy who founded the CIA. And so Bill Donovan personally defends him in his trial, and he's like granted citizenship through like a friend of a friend. And so he's allowed to see the United States. And immediately after that, he's like, yeah, not bad here. I still kind of hate the Soviets. So he joins the army, and the United States is a private. And works his way up as a private. Barely speaks any English, by the way, like very rudimentary English. But they're like, people in the army are like, I think you fought in a war before. Like, you're kind of good at this stuff. So he goes, his first station is in Germany. I don't remember what part, but he gets in a bar fight, gets kind of in trouble for it. But he wants to he asks for like a reassignment. So he's reassigned to another unit. And they kind of really spot his talent, and they train him. They're like, oh, well, you kind of fought Special Forces World War II. Like, would you like to do the same thing? So he gets his paratrooper certification in Fort Bend, like in Georgia. He gets like all this stuff. So he usually becomes a Green Beret. he fights in Iran, where he captures like a down spy plane, U.S. spy plane. Like there have been like other previous failed missions to get, but he parachuted in, climbed up the face of a mountain, captured the information on the plane, and brought the bodies of the pilots back down. And so he got like I think a Bronze Star or something for that. So he did that. Then he went to Vietnam, fights in Vietnam. Like he had just 2 tours. On a second tour, him and like one of his like commanding officers get in this huge gunfight. It's him, his commanding officer, and 10 South Vietnamese soldiers, and they fought against. I think it was like a few hundred North Vietnamese soldiers. Held them off and held the position. They held that land. And then after that, I think it's another Bronze Star for that, something like that. Then he, unfortunately though, he dies in a helicopter crash. Like he was like on the Laos border, surveying the Laos border to try to stop supply trains, and he dies in a helicopter crash. But they didn't find his body for like 30 years. So people assumed that his helicopter didn't go down, that he just kind of fled somewhere else to fight the Soviets. People were like had all these like crazy crackpot ideas. Like, you know, in Vietnam, he kind of thought that he was only fighting like the pseudo-Soviets. He went to Afghanistan to fight him there or something, but they found his body in 1999, so he did die in the helicopter crash. But the whole twist in the whole story is that he has a Bronze Star from the United States. He has an Iron Cross from Nazi Germany, and he has a bunch of Finnish awards. And he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery.
God damn.
SS officer buried in Arlington. He's the only one, by the way. Of any ever served, the only one buried in a U.S. War cemetery. You know, like,
I would hope so. He's the only one. Damn.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Dude, as soon as you said Nazi, like the one who joins the Nazis, like, oh shit, I do know this guy.
And he died at 36.
He did all that?
Yeah.
He's 36.
Yeah. Like,
you can look at his pictures online, and you can see pictures of him in like an SS uniform with like the skulls and everything. Like,
that's so crazy. That's so funny to me. The part I laugh though about when you're telling the story is how I never understood. People just always skip over the traveling parts because there's like he bummed around Europe, he bummed around America, made a way up to Brooklyn. I'm like, how? How did he just like? He doesn't speak the language.
He literally swam to shore, and he made his way up to New York.
Yeah,
and he didn't get caught until like he was a carpenter in New York. He was doing odd jobs. He was a carpenter until the FBI knocked on his door and said, "Hey, you shouldn't be here."
How did the FBI find out about him if he's just doing odd jobs in Brooklyn?
I don't know. Maybe he gave up his name because, like, his original name was Larry Torni, and when he went to the United States, he kind of like changed his name to it was Lauri Torni, so he changed his name to Larry Thorne. So it's kind of similar. Maybe someone I don't know if someone recognized him. Maybe told some drunk person a story one time. It was like no fucking way. I don't know.
Yeah, he may have just been like on like an immigrant list, and like they knocked his door and goes, "You're an immigrant, but you're also this guy."
We highly suspect you of being a Nazi. Come with us, please. I don't know.
I mean, there's just some people in history that just love to fight because I feel like if I was just in America, I would just say, you know what, I'm good. I would do like what the White Death guy did. Just go and just be like, okay, I'm good. I'm done. I did my part.
He hated the Soviets that much. Like, he hated the Soviets. That was his whole life.
I'm sure. I mean, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that hated certain people that didn't go and join different military forces just to fight one enemy.
He didn't have that kind of agency. Like, early in his life, like, he kind of took control of his own destiny. Like, he said, well, the war here is done in Finland. I'm going to go train in Germany. Because I know Germany has, they're trained to fight another war. I'm going to join them to fight. And then he did that. And he's like, well, after the Finnish lost that war again, he's like, well, I have those contacts in Germany. They can train me to be a better, like, saboteur, like, for essentially guerrilla warfare. Like, that's what they were training him to do. Because even Germany realized, like, hey, we're losing this war. We're going to have to switch to guerrilla warfare at some point. They trained him to do that. And so he thought, worst case scenario, I go back to Russia and just fuck some shit up. And then so instead of that, he's like, well, I'm going to go back home to Finland. He lives with his family. There's a lot of gap. We don't know about that. But even after he went back to Finland, went to jail, he's like, I'm going to be a lumberjack for a while. That's what he did. And he's
Whatever
like,
happened to
South America.
What happened to his girgirl?
He left while she was in Finland, and he said he would come back for her, but he
Oh.
never did, and she remarried.
That's too bad.
Like once he's in Venezuela, it's like, how's he gonna get back? He's like they'll arrest me.
I do love the part. Oh, this is the other part that made me laugh is when I was listening. When he said, "Oh, the Cold War is heating up. I don't want to be in Sweden, so I'll go to Latin America. You know, the home to like one of the biggest Cold War proxies in all of like around the world.
Yes, but
so many proxy wars in fucking Latin America.
Yes, but like the thing, I think what he did, the very reason he did it is probably the Soviets probably would have found him, even in Sweden. So he's like, well, I go to South America and Venezuela. That's where like former Nazis disappeared. Like
lots of Nazis fled to South America.
Yeah. And so like I'm sure he thought like because of that he could do it. And then he's like, well, you work for a shipping company. He's like, I'm kind of close to America. Sounds a lot better than the place I'm in. Swam to shore, started a life in New York. And and then he probably would have stayed there until the FBI knocked on his door. It's like, hey, we know you.
So if the FBI doesn't come to his door, does he join the U.S. Army?
Probably not. Bill Donovan is personally defended him in his trial.
Talk about a guy who knows what he's good at. He's like, I'm good at fighting. That's what I'm going to do with my entire life.
He joined the army as a private. It wasn't even his entire life, too. He was 36 when he died.
I like how they were just like, you seem pretty good at...
Like, that's just it.
He could have fought in like 2 or 3 more wars.
This guy, he's just like... I just think it's funny. He's a private, and all these guys are looking at him going, I think you might know a thing or two about this whole war thing.
Yeah.
Oh, me? Me? No,
not me.
Yeah.
John Wayne's character in the movie Green Berets is based off of him.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Damn. So he even got a movie made about him.
There's even a song about him. It's the Soldier of 3 Armies.
That's badass that he fought for 3 armies. I mean, yes, Nazis are evil. I agree, but I mean, obviously, he personally was not evil. Maybe I shouldn't say that. People are gonna. It's just like, oh, just train me, and they're like, hey, we need people, so get on in here and have a good time, and you can kill as many Soviets as you want.
He might have been evil. He sounds like he enjoyed warfare a lot.
Yeah, maybe he was evil. I don't know him personally. You're right, Joe. He could have been an asshole, but
I don't know. Communists aren't people. There's no proof he killed anyone besides communists.
Communists aren't people. Yeah, I mean, that's what I meant though about the whole. There's got to be something else. Like, yes, he might have hated the Soviets, but there's plenty of people that hated other countries.
Oh yeah.
In the world's history, that did not decide to join different militaries in order to fight said, country or nation or empire. I mean, that'd be like, imagine if someone was like part of the Parthians, they wanted to fight Rome, and then they were like, you know what, I'm gonna join the fucking Huns or the Germanic tribes. Like, you'd be like, what the fuck? Why are you traveling all around just to fight the Romans in different militaries?
There's no proof that didn't happen. There's a crazy part.
It happened a lot more common in like
ancient. There's no proof that didn't happen.
Like a lot of times, especially in the Viking era, you're following the big name. That big name guy dies. Okay, I'm gonna find the next big name. It may not be for the same side. You may be fighting for a different. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's a lot more common back in ancient warfare, actually.
Yeah, just all those crazy stories lost to history. Like,
yeah,
there was one U.S. soldier who fought in World War II and Korea and Vietnam. I don't remember the guy's name, but he fought in like all 3 of those wars. Actually, like fought, not like commanded troops, like fought.
Yeah, I just think some people, yeah, like Joe said, some people are just good. They know what they're good at and they know what they enjoy. And so it's tragic. Like, I knew it was going to end with, I didn't know how it ended, but when you said he died in helicopter crash, excuse me, I said, yeah, I could see that. I thought that's how all those badass motherfuckers go out. Like, he got a cut and got infected. And like Khal Drogo from fucking, yeah, that's how those motherfuckers always die in some stupid shit where it's like, he fell off a bridge and he was drunk and fell off a bridge. Like, they always die in like some sad, unheroic way.
That was the thing. They didn't find his body till 30 years later. People just assumed like, there's no way that guy died in a plane crash. Like, he's for sure alive, just like killing commies in Afghanistan or something.
He's still fighting the Soviets to this day.
Like people a lot of people assume he didn't die. He just kind of just started skipping around different countries to try to kill Soviets. I don't know.
No, I'm saying he's like, I don't care if Soviets fell. Like I still fight them to this day. Like I still fight Russia. He's in the Ukraine right now, just fighting the fucking undercover Russian troops.
Oh.
Yeah, that's about a story, Jared. I think we're gonna, before the meeting runs out, let's move on to Joe and Joe's story.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me tell you a story. Now, I did not choose to cover Finland and the Winter War, unfortunately.
Boo!
You hate the
Finns? One of us.
You did your homework together. Y'all cheated. It's not.
No, we didn't. That was serious. That was a joke. That was a quiz. I was like,
so I wanted to go after
the Winter
you.
War.
The guy
I
I'm
was like-
talking about is from Norway, so he's from the same part of the world.
Oh, he's from Norway. Well, at least we're all in the same wavelength, so that's good. That's good.
The Nords.
Mine's a lot shorter, and it's from almost 1,000 years earlier. It's from
Okay.
the early 11th century. Y'all ever heard of the Battle of Stamford Bridge?
Nope.
No, actually.
So quick.
I may have. Is this the one where that single guy held off a whole?
Oh, Jared,
Yeah.
Jared, don't spoil it.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Good. No. So Battle of Stamford Bridge. So Harold with an O, Harold Godwinson, is the King of England. He's leading his army to go crush his brother, Lord Tostig. I think his name is Tostig. It's like Toast. Tostig. Lord
Yeah.
Toast.
Lord Toast.
And Harold with an A, Harold Hardrada, who's leading a Norwegian army. And so they're going to fight. And in this battle, the Norwegians and Toast are caught off guard completely. And so while they're trying to set up and prepare for the battle, this one lone Viking Norwegian berserker goes down to this bridge, stands on the bridge, dares the English to charge him, which they oblige. He holds the bridge single-handedly for almost an hour. He kills 40 men just by himself. He's armed only with an axe. He has one axe. He kills 40 of them, and the only way they beat him is a Saxon man, an English guy, rows a boat underneath the bridge and stabs him with a spear in the groin, and he ends up bleeding out.
That's a bad way to go.
Yeah, but he gave the Norwegians a time to prepare, but they ultimately didn't matter. They lost anyway. Harold Hardrada died. Lord Toast died. But they ended up killing 5,000 people, and that's kind of important because 3 weeks later, William the Conqueror showed up and defeated Harold Godwinson. So this battle, which is seen as the end of the Viking era, this is the end. This is the last real big hurrah for the Vikings. And basically they're the reason the Saxons lost to William the Conqueror.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this dude who killed 40 people, which is a pretty good legacy for your warrior culture.
Can you imagine being a nameless soldier, do something like that, be remembered 1,000 years later?
Oh yeah, it's just
do something that crazy. That's just a nameless guy in there. It's not like he's a general or some sort of giant historical figure. He just stood at a bridge and he killed 40 men.
40 men with an axe.
And these aren't just regular peasants. These are armored.
Actual armored
Yes.
Saxon.
Yes.
I like how just the way to get him out, to take him out, they were like, all right, this isn't working, guys. One of us has to sneak under the bridge and stab him in the balls, and then we'll win. That's the only way to take this guy down.
That was very un-Russian of them. Very un-Russian of them.
Yeah. Now those Norwegians, man, they're tenacious.
Yeah, that's I always wonder what drives people to do that, because Joe, you could probably fill it in, but You said he did it, and it gave the Norwegians time, set up and whatever. And I mean, I know they lost, but he was giving them time. But did anybody ask him to do it? Like, was he just like, shit, we're in a desperate time. I have to save, like, I have to give my guys time, or was he just like, oh yeah, let's go, come on?
The sources don't say, but he is described as a berserker, so that was kind of their thing.
Did he eat one of those berserker mushrooms, like one of the special ones that like make you go fucking
I don't
crazy?
know if he did or not. They don't specify, but if he did, yeah, he could have been tripping balls.
He could have Vinland Saga'd it. You don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of their thing. They were the ones that ran into battle first and kind of frightened the enemy and stuff like that. So,
can you imagine how demoralizing it is watching 40-year-old people die, not just get hurt, die, trying to kill one guy.
One guy.
One guy. And this isn't like modern warfare where it's like, oh, maybe like he's a really good like shot or something. No, this guy is just physically stronger and better with his axe. Just knocking him down.
He just wanted more, baby. He wanted it more. He wanted it more.
He wanted this guy more a little bit. No, but warfare in ancient times, I guess we can kind of talk about this, since we're getting towards the end, is how different warfare changes from like a soldier fighting 1,000 years ago to now. Just how much warfare has progressed in certain, it's interesting. I would like to look a topic as to what PTSD was like for people who fought in like medieval combat or Roman times.
I'm sure just flat out wasn't talked about. I'm sure.
No, yeah, but they had to have horrific. Like they saw worse things almost. You're up close.
You're up close, but like,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't think the injuries are as grave sometimes. Like I think the pinnacle is either World War I or maybe the Eastern Front or maybe the Civil War. Like that's when like modern technology got up just in advance of what tactics were at the time. Like it's where that bleeding edge of technology just gets a little bit better than what like warfare was like used to. Like people rode horses in some places in World War I. Like it's just that bleeding edge is probably like the worst of warfare. Where people just get the worst like experiences. Like being up close like that is brutal. Just as bad to have a bomb or a mortar drop in your trench and kill all of your friends, have your brains all over you.
You're right.
I would say, okay, so there's two things I would say to that. They're actually about two different things, but I don't know too much about medieval history, but from what I understand, what little I know about PTSD back then was that's why a lot of them actually became like monks. A lot of them actually went to monasteries to repent for their sins because they were like, oh, well, I can't, like only God can, I have to spend my whole life asking for forgiveness because I've committed so many, I've killed so many people. However, obviously I think some of them were probably just like the White Death guy who wasn't happy. He wasn't proud of it. He's like, yeah, it sucked, but I did my duty. And Jared mentioned something I think is very important. I think the difference between modern warfare and ancient warfare is that I think, okay, so chivalry was really overblown. There was never really a time when everyone was just, chivalrous and playing by the rules. But I do think,
not in actuality, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I do think there's something about more honor, like more, it's just not, it's everywhere. It's in native culture. It's in, Asia, India. You see it in Africa where it's mano a mano. Like me killing a guy, it could be brutal. Like I cut him with my axe, but it's sort of a fair fight in a sense. Like, well, it's me versus you, or my army versus your army, and yes, you killed them up close, but it's almost like you feel like, well, at least they had a chance. But if you just have a random grenade thrown in and you watch your friends get blown up, or like something random happens and they die, or like in today's war, like a drone strike, you just feel like, oh, that wasn't very fair. Like it just feels like there's like, it's not like, it's like, oh, if me and Joe fight and Joe kills me, I'm like, well, at least I died like an honorable warrior's death. But there's a lot of things. Yeah, but then like he pours it. But then there's like, you had gas attacks and World War I. You have a lot of shit that eventually it's like, that's not very honorable. It's not a very honorable way to die or kill people. So eventually it's kind of like, I think it became, yeah.
Well, that's fair. And Jared's not wrong in that it spiked in World War One and when like the Civil War, because that's when that whole honor thing kind of finally started to die. Because up to that point, they're still fighting in like with like rules. You have to fight in a line. You have to point at each other.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. And the Civil War kind of realized technology is getting too good for that. You can't do that anymore. Too many people die.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more of like there's more like isolated incidents of like chivalry in war. It's not like this whole war was chivalrous. There's more like it's more like those individual instances. Like this soldier did that. This person did that. Like for example, I think it's the Red Baron. Red Baron was very chivalrous for like a lot of his fights. Like it was very like it's like World War One's a very brutal war, but you have small examples like that. Like I don't know. I feel like if you try to pick a war like or a time period, it's a little bit tougher. But if you pick like individual instances, it might be a little bit easier to kind of use that as a topic.
Yeah.
That's true. I also like how they used to taunt people in medieval warfare. I think we need to bring that back because one of the best parts of the story is before the battle, Hereward Godwinson rode up to the enemy army, looked at Harold Hardrada, and told him, "I'm going to send you home. It's like the only thing I will give you in England is 6 feet of land, maybe a little bit more because you're a little taller than most people." So he's basically.
Yeah, but they were like well thought out back then. Now it's just kind of like,
yeah.
fuck you, no, fuck you.
Yeah.
Hey, they had fuck you back then. That's where they think the middle finger came from, is because they
Fuck
used
you,
to,
pulling the longbow.
they used to,
They used to cut
yeah,
off
they used to cut off the middle fingers. They're like, haha, we have our middle fingers. And
Fuck
that's where
you.
they think it, so it definitely was a fuck you back then.
Yeah, but it's like those large scale insults, not as good.
All of our stories dealt with Sweden.
What we learned today is me and Jared somehow magically are in the same wavelength, and we picked the same war, but thankfully not the same person, because,
yeah,
okay, that was insane. But even Joe picked from the same area, so
yeah.
we got to learn
You
about
could pick fucking anybody, like British, American, Roman, like Greek. It could have been fucking anybody.
I know.
I was gonna go with Lawrence of Arabia, but then I was like, oh no, the White Death. Like they'll know who he is, but it'll be more obscure. But nope, here we are. But yeah, it was a good. So that's the end of our first ever podcast for a great story. So hopefully you guys
Senator
enjoyed it as
Wilson
much as
as
we
the
did.
warrior.
That's not the name. We're ruined. You fucked it up.
It's a good story.
Oh really? What did I say?
A great story.
It's a good story.
Whatever.
It's not great.
It's better.
It's good.
That's how good we are.
We're not
made
great.
it
We're
better
just
than
good.
it's supposed to be.
Wow, look at that. Our first podcast ever completed. Tell us what you guys thought in the comment section down below. If you have any ideas for future subjects you'd like us to cover. If you have any critiques of us, or you just want to call Jared ugly. That's great too, and we approve of this behavior. If you liked it, hit like. If you didn't like it, I don't care. Hit like anyways. Share it with friends and family who enjoy history. Don't be selfish. Everybody needs to hear this podcast. All right, y'all. Until next time.